Hi, and welcome to the first in this series of webinars for Utah adult educators. My name is Danielle Peterson. I'm an adult education specialist at the Utah State Board of Education, and the topic I'm going to be presenting on today is motivating the adult learner. Let's start out by talking about the need for adult education programs. The statistics you see on the left side of your screen come from the 2014 American Community Survey. As you can see, there's a significant number of individuals who reported that they were either in need of a high school diploma or spoke English less than well. And in the 2018 program year, Utah adult education programs enrolled just over 15,000 students, so we're just barely scratching the surface of that potential need. But while the need is great, so are the rewards. A national study out of Penn State University in 2014 found that students who participated in 100 hours or more of instruction with an adult education program saw an average increase in their annual earnings of $9,000. So how's that for life-changing? However, retention is a huge concern across adult education programs. All of these stats come from the 2017-2018 program year. And we had 19,678 students that contacted an adult education program and were entered into Utopia, which is our adult ed database. Of those, only 15,264 made it to 12 hours of instruction. That's the point that we include them on our federal reporting. So we're losing 25% of our students right off the bat. The next benchmark that we're looking at here is 40 hours of instruction, which is the point that students become eligible for post-testing. And you can see there's another significant drop between 12 and 40 hours. At the end of the year, 4,930 students demonstrated an academic level gain, and only 1 in 4 of the students who initially reached out to our programs made it to that 100-hour benchmark that we mentioned on the previous slide as helping students see that boost in their average earnings. The truth is that many of the adults in need of our services have significant barriers that are keeping them from moving forward in the workforce. As adult education programs, it's imperative that we have strong relationships with our partner agencies, such as the Department of Workforce Services and the Utah State Office of Rehabilitation, in order to provide better wraparound services. But there are other factors at play, and the better we can understand what motivates our students, the better we can design our programs to help support them. So with all of that introduction, today we're talking about motivation and what drives our adult learners. I'll be sharing 2 pieces of research. The first is Malcolm Knowles' theory of andragogy, and the second is the New England Adult Learner Persistent Project. So I'll start by introducing Malcolm Knowles. He was the U.S. Director of Adult Education Programs in the 1950s, and he's best known for his theory of andragogy. To define andragogy, it's the study of adult learning, as opposed to pedagogy, which focuses on how children learn at different stages of their development. Knowles believed that adult learning had to be self-driven and student-centric. Knowles identified 5 assumptions about the characteristics of adult learners. First, a maturing self-concept. As a person matures from a child to an adult, their self-concept is also maturing. They move from being dependent on other people to being self-driven and independent. Second, adult learners have an ever-increasing reservoir of experience. They're more easily able to connect new learning to prior learning because they have a broader base of experience that they can draw on than younger students do. Third is a readiness to learn. As adults move into the workplace and/or become caretakers for others, those roles come with new responsibilities that require new knowledge. Adults seek new knowledge because it helps them to adapt to these social roles. Fourth is a shifting orientation to learning. For younger students, learning is often subject-based and postponed. I know I'm not the only one who stared blankly at a trigonometry problem and thought, when am I ever going to need this? Adults, however, are immersed in the workforce, or hope to be, and must immediately apply the things that they're learning. So learning becomes problem-centered. An adult encounters a problem, learns how to solve that problem, and immediately applies that knowledge. The 5th and final pillar is an internal motivation to learn. For children, the motivation to learn is typically external. They go to school because it's expected and frankly required of them. Adults pursue education for internal reasons. They want to grow in their self-development, they're trying to move up the career ladder, or they're facing an unfamiliar problem and they're trying to find a solution. Based on those 5 assumptions, Knowles identified 4 principles that we as educators should consider when teaching adults. First, since adults are self-directed, they should have a say in the content and process of their learning. Second, because adults have so much experience to draw from, their learning should focus on adding to what they already have learned in the past. Third, since adults are looking for practical learning, content should focus on issues related to their work or personal life. And finally, learning should be centered on solving problems instead of memorizing content. So now that we have a little bit of understanding about who adult learners are, I'm going to spend the rest of our time today looking at the New England Adult Learner Persistence Project. This 2008 study was run by the New England Literacy Resource Center and World Education, and it included 18 adult education programs with the goal of improving student retention and outcomes. The full study is worth a read, and it can be found on the New England Literacy Resource Center's website, which I've given you the link on your screen there. But today I'm just going to summarize that study and share the 6 underlying drivers of persistence that the researchers identified. And here they are. We'll go through each of the 6 drivers of persistence in more detail in just a moment, but I wanted to quickly define persistence. So definition of persistence is a firm or obstinate continuance in a course of action despite difficulty or opposition. In layman's terms, I would call that stick-with-itness, but that might not be a real word. The first driver is a sense of belonging and community. It's human nature that when we feel welcomed, respected, and develop a sense of belonging, we're more likely to return to whatever setting or task invoked those feelings. When adults decide to resume their education, their expectations are usually based on whatever their previous experiences were like. So for some adult learners, the decision to go back to school can be really anxiety-provoking. They're stepping into unfamiliar territory, and they may have an expectation that they don't belong there. So for that reason, it's really important to begin cultivating a sense of belonging from the moment a prospective adult learner comes through the doors. At the most basic level, building community calls for fostering communication, or connections between people, activities and processes that help students and staff get to know each other to build trust and camaraderie. So let's take a minute to look at some of the strategies a program might use to build a greater sense of community. First is ensuring that first contact that prospective students have is welcoming and informative. This might mean making sure that there's somebody there to greet students or checking that your signs are clear and up to date. A welcoming environment communicates caring and respect, encourages students to take risks in their learning, and consciously counters racism and prejudice. Also, where possible, you might build community by holding group orientations for new students, where they have an opportunity to meet peers, establish rapport with staff, and find connections across classrooms. Another strategy is to develop student cohorts by grouping students who participate together in program activities. This might look like study groups or workshops that are targeted at subgroups of students depending on their goals. You can develop systems to solicit and use student feedback to make improvements in your instruction, counseling, and program processes. Also, create learning opportunities that allow students to work both individually and within groups. I know this can be challenging for programs that rely heavily on distance learning, but you're not only going to improve their sense of belonging and community, you're also going to help the students develop greater college and career readiness skills. And the last suggestion here is to implement a formal system for staying in contact and supporting the continuous learning of students, particularly those who are absent. This might mean developing attendance policies that make it easy for students to re-enter a program if they have to stop out for a period. It could also look like a social media page or an email newsletter so students stay informed even if they have to miss class. And some programs use text message-based apps such as Remind to reach out to their students. The next driver of persistence is clarity of purpose. which refers to helping students gain clarity about their own purposes for learning, their goals and dreams, and about the program's expectations and approaches to providing education. That way, adults can make informed decisions and take responsibility for their learning. Research shows that learners who establish concrete goals and are given the opportunity to see that they're making measurable progress toward them are more likely to persist in their studies. Also, when students have opportunities to hear the goals and aspirations of others, that really can expand their notions of what's possible. So to help students gain clarity of purpose, here are some things a program might do. First, consider your intake processes. You should have a consistent, non-threatening approach for assessing and placing students, evaluating their progress, and sharing that information with students. Provide students constructive feedback on their learning and progress, as well as opportunities to reflect and assess their progress, including holding regularly scheduled conferences with students. Be upfront about what commitment you're asking of students. You need to provide potential students with enough information that they can make an informed decision about enrolling, including a realistic assessment of their skill levels and the time and effort that's required to reach their goals. If you have an expectation that a student attend a certain number of hours per week or make a minimum amount of progress each month, that needs to be explicitly communicated to them. Next, help students set achievable short-term goals and identify benchmarks toward their long-term goals in order to see progress and develop a sense of self-accomplishment. Be sure to revisit those goals with students both individually and in groups so that they can monitor their progress and consider new goals and possibilities. This should also engage students in considering their options for post-secondary education and training. The next strategy is to contextualize instruction by using authentic materials and real-world activities that are relevant and meaningful. You give adults opportunities to apply their new skills outside the classroom. One strategy for doing this is called integrated education and training, and it incorporates basic skills instruction with work readiness and job training skills. And lastly, have a system for identifying students' needs for additional support services, and then be able to identify which of those needs the program can address and which cases should be referred to other agencies. When you do make a referral to one of our partner agencies, it's important to make sure that you're doing what's called a warm handoff and connecting them directly to a partner, not just giving them a number to call. And best practice would dictate that whenever a referral is made, there's documentation so that you can follow up on that. The next driver is agency. Agency refers to the capacity for human beings to make things happen through their actions. As people mature and they're moving from dependence towards self-direction, they want to be treated as responsible individuals with the capacity to determine things for themselves. Research on how people learn shows that learners of all ages are more motivated when they can see the usefulness of what they're learning and when they can use that information to do something that has an impact on others. To help students develop agency, programs can provide meaningful opportunities for student involvement and leadership in areas such as new student orientations, acting as a peer mentor, program evaluation, civic participation, and building connections in the community. Give students opportunities to be self-reliant, such as assigning homework or giving them a role in a group project. Engage students in exploring ways to take action to address their barriers, such as public transportation, access to daycare, or applying for financial aid for college. You can also help your students by helping them to learn to identify their own signs of progress and really be able to monitor that more independently. And then lastly, be sure to revisit and revise goals with students, both individually and in groups, so that they can monitor their progress and continue to consider new goals and possibilities. The fourth driver is competence. All adults have a need to feel like they're competent in key aspects of their lives. A decision to return to school as an adult speaks of his or her desire to build their competence. And an adult's beliefs about and realistic assessment of their competence can boost their self-efficacy, which in turn can have a profound effect on their persistence and achievement. So here are some strategies to help students build competence. First, teach them study skills while recognizing the learning strategies they already have and build on those. Recognize a broad range of student achievements, both academic and non-academic, and celebrate students as they accomplish their goals. Engage students in an open dialogue about their learning process. And this is a little repetitive, but again, it's important to help students set achievable short-term goals and identify the benchmarks of their long-term goals so that they can see progress and feel a sense of accomplishment. We have to help them to identify those signs of progress and strategies for monitoring their learning independently. The next driver is relevance. The degree of perceived relevance in an instructional program really is a key factor in the adult's motivation to persist in their studies, even if they need to stop out for a while. Most adults have a lot of competing priorities that may take precedence if the instructional program doesn't feel like it's meeting their needs or interests. Here are some strategies that a program could use to help build relevance. First, using authentic materials and real-world instructional activities that are relevant and meaningful to students' lives, and help students prepare to use their new skills outside of the classroom. Integrate the use of technology into the classroom, using real-world apps and websites as much as possible. Acknowledge that students have prior experience and build explicitly on the skills, knowledge, and experiences that they bring to their learning. And involve students in the decision-making process about their learning, including making choices about lesson content and organization, which might include the timing or sequence of lessons and other matters that affect their learning. And the last of the 6 drivers of persistence is stability. Learning is difficult in an environment that is chaotic or unstable, but many adult programs are designed out of the best of intentions to just allow students to enter and exit at any time. This constant coming and going can be termed turbulence, and a growing body of research is showing that it's disruptive to the learning process and actually decreases persistence. Many adult learners' lives are marked by instability that's caused by poverty or trauma, and even though we can't change a student's life circumstances outside of school, we can offer predictable, consistent programming that enables students to participate more fully and with greater ease in our programs. So let's look at a few strategies to help build stability within a program. First, institute managed enrollment where feasible to help reduce turbulence and promote class stability and continuity. Next, develop a written policy guide for the program and be consistent about how you enforce those policies. Next, maintain a consistent service pattern. This means having the same class times, sites, and teachers on a predictable, reliable schedule, and avoid canceling classes unless there's a true emergency. Promote a support network within the program where staff, volunteers, or peer mentors make personal connections with specific students on a regular basis. And finally, be aware of the signs of trauma, addiction, learning disabilities, and other mental health issues. As a teacher, we should always be adding to our toolbox of strategies to help minimize these barriers, as well as building relationships with a network of external partners who can assist us in providing wraparound services for our students. So that was very brief overview of those different drivers of persistence. I would recommend visiting that New England literacy resource. I'm just tearing up their name, but the link is there available, and I will include it in the comments on this YouTube page for you as well. If you have additional questions, my contact information is up on the screen for you. And I also wanted to remind you of some upcoming webinars to be aware of. So they will also be live streamed here on USBE's Adult Risk and Custody YouTube page. The next one is going to be in 2 weeks, where we'll be providing Utopia updates. We'll be looking at the recent changes to the assessment entry, as well as looking forward at some of the changes that are coming to transcripts soon. And then you can see that we've got a couple of additional webinars coming up in October. So I look forward to seeing you there. And if you subscribe to the YouTube channel here, you'll get notifications as those recordings become available. All right, thank you very much. That's it for me.